morning everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Bianca Valerio. It's a rainy Friday here in Belgium, specifically the medieval town of Bruges. So as you can see, there's barely anybody here at the market square. It's about 8:30 in the morning. So let me share you some of the things that I had learned. So first and foremost, this statue over here, it's composed of two heroes. They were leaders of the guilds. So guilds is an old day term for unions. So one was the leader for the butchers, another was the leader for the tailors. Now the buildings right behind me are the different guilds. So for example, let's say if FedEx was here, that would be FedEx. Another one would be like, let's say for Armani, and so on and so forth. The different types of services that they would provide in the city. Now this one over here, so because these two guys were heroes, that would obviously mean that they fought something. So they fought the King of France because apparently they didn't have any rights. Well, I think that applies today for a lot of things, right? That's why the union is very prevalent in a lot of societies. So they didn't have any right, and that is why when they fought the war, they had built this watchtower over here in the 13th century to signify their success. So this one actually rings every hour or every so, and what it sings actually today, or what it actually plays, is Somewhere Over the Rainbow from the Wizard of Oz. Yeah, quite lovely. Now this building over here kind of looks very like Harry Potter. In the past, Belgium had like 10 provinces. So all the 10 provinces, like basically they congregated here, and this was the office for Bruges. And then this one over here was the former post office. Now this is now just an exhibition center. It's actually free to go inside, and this is sort of like a store, like I think like a souvenir store of sorts. Now one of the things that you can also do, of course, you can see there's a lot of carriage rides that you can do here all around Bruges. It's a really small town. If you can believe, there's only 20,000 people who are situated within the medieval town, and then some of the towns surrounding Bruges is about 100,000. So that's 120,000 people residing here. Impressive. So now we are entering that watchtower. So this was also to keep the enemies away, because there were actually people at the top of the tower who would literally watch for invaders. So nowadays inside the Belfry or the Belfry and halls, it's actually an exhibition area. So they have like a couple of shows, events, trade fairs. This is what this medieval watchtower is now used for. Okay, so you know, one of the things that I absolutely love about European architecture, and not just here, it's so different from what you would see in the Philippines or other parts of Asia or whatnot. Now take a look at this building. Do you see these little black lines here, like this one? You see those black lines? Okay, so those black lines, so originally the architecture here, houses were made of wood, and then from wood it became stone. So these are actually used to keep them together in a way to sort of like compress them together. But if you actually take a look at it, it actually looks like it's a design, but it's actually not. These are metal. It's sort of like to compress them to keep them together. Now our next stop, this over here, was the form of like an old medieval palace. So it's sort of like, you know, when the royalty, they would have, let's say, their main home, and then they would have, let's say, a summer palace or a winter palace. This is sort of an example of that. And at the same time, it was also an office. So I was telling you, right, that royalty would have palaces, but this wasn't actually owned by royalty. This was owned by a nobleman. That's actually him on top of the horse, but that's his face. I know, guys, super bowl haircut. Anyway, so he was really important. When you think of Belgian beer, so one of the ingredients that you have in beer today we know is hops, right? But back in the day it was called, or it was Groot. So he would tax the Groot that was being put in all that beer. So you can imagine that's a lot of beer. So you can imagine why he has such a grand palatial estate. Okay, so another thing. So here Of course, that's actually still part of his palace, and that is actually part of a church, which is right in the back. So, in the back of this building right here, apparently he has a door that connects to the church because this guy, this noble guy, actually has his own private chapel. So, what are the two things that we are going to see that's most important inside the church, which is really interesting, is number one, the tomb of the last Countess of Flanders. I think that's what it is. The second thing that we're going to see, which is quite impressive, is the statue of the Madonna and Child that was actually made by Michelangelo. So Patrick had actually made me stand right down here when I walked down the stairs, and he asked me, so, you know, which do you think is the real level, like the street level? Is it down there or up here? And I'm like, of course, up here. He's like, no, it was actually down there because back in the 13th century, you know, when people lived here, you know, you have to imagine medieval town. There was actually, you know, a lot of pigs, a lot of animals, and a lot of hay, and a lot of just like sand on the streets. It wasn't really paved like this. So in the past, if people wanted to throw their garbage, they would just throw it from their windows up there, just throw it down to the street. So obviously there was just a lot of dust that was here. There was also from horses and carriages and whatnot. And then through time, like I'm not even joking, if it was food, eventually, like whatever animals were here, they would eat it. But eventually with time, the road had actually risen because of the amount of dust and just landfill or whatever you call it, but yeah, crazy. Okay, so where are we? So we're walking into this courtyard, and I'm finding out that this building right here is part of the back entrance of the first or the oldest hospital in Europe. That's pretty amazing. Now, this was the old hospital, and we're actually flashing a photo of what it actually looked inside. So all the patients would actually be inside like so those boxes, and the ones that would take care of the patients were the nuns. Okay, now this one over here, you see these? All of these are like different herbs, different plants or whatnot, because the nuns would actually come here to this garden to actually make their medicines, and it would be right here. The word is apothecary. So in many European languages, they have their own way of saying apothecary. Here it says apothecary. So it's sort of like an old pharmacy, if you will, and they would make it right there. Now again, this whole town, I got it all wrong, the whole town is actually UNESCO, and because a lot of the things right now, as much as they were able to retain the outside, of course, a lot of the inside has already changed. This is the original part of the hospital, St. John's Hospital, and then eventually it was just extended to that area. So of course, leave it to any town in the world, whether medieval or modern, to have a red light district. And this is where we are right now, this very narrow road. It's not so much like the ladies were hanging out in the street. Here, there's like a representation right here that you can see. So we enter the monastery, and we actually come to this little courtyard right here. There's like a garden, but the nice thing about it, like I told you, all these different places under UNESCO, like the whole town is pretty much a museum. So if you actually take a look right above me, it's sort of like photos of, you're going to see, it's sort of like an overview of the history. Unfortunately, it is not in English. However, there is a QR code that you can see right there that you can scan it, and you can choose the language that you want. And long story short, so this place, it used to be where women who were widowed or unmarried or whatnot, they all came together, and they all had like different houses. I reckon this was like one house, because look, you have a garden, you have a well, they all had different houses, and they all came together, and you know what, let's build a community and let's do that. And then they realized, you know what, as much as we are independent, I think it's just not working. And then eventually, how did it become a monastery? So in 1874 to 1971, this lady over here, Genevieve de Lemon Trist, yes, this lady over here, she eventually became like the first official mother superior, which then turned this place into a monastery, and it still runs up until today. So this apparently is the most romantic, minus the rain and the raincoats, the most romantic place in all of Bruges. So this is called the Lake of Love. So apparently back in the day there was sort of like their own like Romeo and Juliet story. So behind that building, it's just a legend, guys. No one thinks it's really true, but apparently there was like some noble family, a rich family, kind of like Romeo and Juliet, and then the girl was just waiting. I think they were going to meet up somewhere here, and then unfortunately he didn't show up, or he was late or whatnot, and then she was so depressed and she killed herself in the lake. Kind of sad. Now what's not so lovely is that this is not clean water, because this connects to this building over here, which is the regulator for the water. I reckon it's like a filtering system. Now this is connected to the other side where we saw all those beautiful swans. Yes, that canal. Now that canal is actually really lovely. It's clean. Now these two parts, now this building, which used to connect this water and that water over there. But now it's no longer the case, because look, there are actually swans and ducks that are swimming. I reckon it's because the water is clean. Okay, so it wouldn't be a visit to Belgium if there was no Belgian beer experience, which you can. Look, there's a ticketing office right here for one of their main breweries, which is called Half Moon Brewery. So there was so many people earlier, and we finally found our way to come here. Now, back in the day, they would brew their beer here, and then they would put them in barrels like this, and then they would have them shipped to wherever they were going to be bottled. But nowadays we're a little bit modern, where they would brew the beer here, and then instead of putting them in barrels, they would actually make them go through a pipeline, which you can see here right at the entrance, which is wow, pretty revolutionary. Thank you. Right, okay, so they actually give you like free samples. Obviously, as you can see, there's so many tourists inside. This is like, obviously they also have a partnership with tour groups for sure, because they actually let you sample it.
Soft chocolate.
Yeah, so there's like a ganache inside, or a truffle.
It's cacao powder. It's very nice.
Oh wow.
Very good. See us.
The
box
girl.
is €10. If you should buy 3, you get a 4 for free.
One box of that is €10, and then if you buy like 3, you buy more, you get discount.
Just join the paper and then they give the reduction.
So good.
No problem.
Here, have this right here.
In a few minutes, I think that
Very nice. So while we're waiting for my family to shop for their chocolate, so as you can see, it's called Pure Chocolat Artisanal Chocolatier. So I'm sure they're one of many that are open in this town. Like I said, I'm sure they have some partnership with some tour groups and whatnot. That's why they're open early, or they're even open and then give a free sample. And hey, sometimes that one sample can turn into really good business. Belgian chocolate, you know, the reason why they're quite proud of their chocolate is because it doesn't have any other oil. There's no like palm oil, margarine, coconut oil, or whatever oils that you have. It's just pure cacao. Okay, so earlier we were kind of making our way back to where we came from. We are back actually at that palace of that guy who attacks like the Groot. So apparently the stairway going down. So this is where you can actually pass, and this is where all the taxes were put. I'm not really sure what that means, like they would do the office here, or I don't know, but he said that this is where they would put all the taxes, or maybe all the gold, all the money. Maybe it was sort of like, you know, it's not like they had it on a computer, but this is where they would do it. And then you see this window at the top there. So this window at the top right here, this is actually where he would like spy to make sure that their workers were actually doing their job. He just wanted to make sure that's sort of like a spy window right over there. And then now this bridge that you see over here, this actually didn't exist. In the 17th century, this was actually a graveyard. And then eventually the graveyard, a lot of the bodies I think were exhumed, and that's why some of the stones that you see here on the bridge actually came from like the tombstones of that cemetery. Kind of gruesome, but we were assured that there were no more any bodies right there. All right, so that is for me, guys. So we are back here at the main square, and that wraps up. Honestly, it was like 2 hours and 30 minutes for our walking tour, whether it was the rain or because I was recording or because we were just walking slow because there were a lot of tourists. But that pretty much wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this side of Belgium here in Bruges. I'm Bianca Valerio. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until our next guided tour in somewhere around the world, I'm Bianca Valerio. Bye guys.